And welcome into Let's Talk Sports on the Cool Hit Sports Network. James Carey, happy to have you along with us here this morning. District play starting up for many teams last evening, and we'll check the scoreboard in just a little bit if you're following along with me on Cool TV. The ticker scrolling at the bottom of your screen, so all of those are there. Let's run through those real quick. Ashland last night over East Carter 35-21. It was Raceland easing past Betsy Lane 57-6. Boyd County over Holmes 43-8. It was East Ridge upending Bath County 50-20. Mason County over Fleming County 40-28. That was a Fleming County 14-13 lead at the half. The Royals moved to 7-0. Rowan County over Harrison County 28-13. Ironton pounds Cogrove 55-6. Johnson Central over Perry County Central 52-7. It was Knott County Central past Morgan County 40-8. Lawrence County on Thursday night defeated Pike County Central 48-8. Lewis County gets a winning season with a win last night as they knock off Phelps 48-6. Paintsville blanks Fairview 43-0. It was Greenup County over Russell 28-27. We'll talk with Zach Moore, head coach for the Musketeers, in just a few moments on their win last night in the Backyard Brawl. And an emotional game over in Olive Hill. Prestonsburg knocks off West Carter by a score of 38-14. As we mentioned, we'll talk with Coach Moore, and a nice win for their team last night, not only on the road, but more importantly, to start district play. And I think in a district that's going to be wide open this year, Ashland getting a good win last night over the defending district champion, East Carter. So a good way to start things. Now, what can you do with it moving forward? And we'll talk with Coach Moore in just a few moments. We'll check the Major League Baseball postseason picture. First games in the book from yesterday. We'll preview the matchups coming up for today, see where the standings say. It was not good to be a favorite yesterday. I'll leave it at that. Top 25 college football action in today. We'll get the preview of which games are coming up, some good matchups later on this evening. And, of course, the Borders Sporting Goods rant of the week. That's all as we continue here on Let's Talk Sports. All right, let's take a break. When we return, we'll talk with Zach Moore, head coach for the Greenup County Musketeers. That's as we continue here on Let's Talk Sports on the Cool Hit Sports Network. Back here on Let's Talk Sports on the Coed Sports Network, James Carter, happy to have you along with us this morning. Joining us on the telephone as well as a video on Cool TV, head coach for the Greenville County Musketeers, Zach Moore's in. Coach, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning.
Thanks for joining us, Coach. Nice win last night, and an unorthodox maybe way to come away with a victory, but not importantly a win is a win, but more importantly a district win on the road is even sweeter.
There's nothing unorthodox about a win, if you ask us at this point, because I think we've experienced several different ways to win in the last minute of a game. So as long as it continues to be wins, then we're all for experiencing all sorts of different ways to get it done.
Speaking of the issues that you had last year, again, and you and I, we talked about this at length many times, not being able to find a way to win late. And this year, having some adversity early on and having to find a way to win. How much have you attributed to those lessons you learned from last year to the reason that you've been able to finish out these games this year that maybe in the past you did not?
I believe experience is the best teacher. And we have experienced every way, I think, or not every way, but a lot of different ways to both win and to lose a game. And I think the thing that sticks out to me about our team is that we were a mentally tough team last season. We just weren't able to have that translate from where we wanted to be to where we ended up. But this year, the credit to our players that they've been able to, translate that mental toughness to their on-the-field performance. And again, it's there's all sorts of different ways to win, and we're trying to explore all of those at this point.
What's the one thing that you take away from last year? Again, a winless season on the field, but you graduated every skilled player coming into the season beginning last year, but you felt like you were on the brink of something special coming away, and this year you're starting to see that pay off the dividends.
Again, I think it just goes back to experience. I mean, when you don't have anybody that's been there and done that and experienced things that happen within the game and how a football game, especially a high school football game, is just a roller coaster of emotions and the momentum swings several different times through the course of a game. And to have those experiences, especially as a young person, a confident young person, I don't think there's any substitute for that.
One of those guys that has the experience, obviously, is your quarterback at Tyson Sammons. And last year, it was literally learning on the job by training. But you look at the progression he's made from last year to this year. How much of a different player do you see out there for number two from last year to now?
Well, running the ball, I think if you've watched us a lot, that there's not a lot of difference. He was a very talented runner with the ball last season, and of course, he's a year older and developed physically and does some things maybe he wasn't able to do running the ball last year, but he's always been a tough runner. But most of his growth has been in throwing the ball. And again, we don't ask him to be a prolific passer, but we do try to do just a few little things really, really well. And he stepped up and done a nice job there. But again, I think from a freshman to a sophomore, it's just having been there and done it. And so the moments no longer are too big for him. I mean, we're confident on third and long, throwing the ball and sitting in the pocket and him having the patience to do it. In fact, there were a couple of times last night I thought maybe he should have pulled it down and run it. But to his credit, he hung there in the pocket and delivered a few times for us on big third down conversions.
Having a guy like him that, again, is so powerful with his legs, but adding the element of the pass. Not a kid that's going to go out and maybe throw it 20, 25 times a game, but picking those times to use the pass rather than the run, how much does that make his running ability more explosive than it already is?
Well, anybody I think that's watched football over the course of their life understands that when you are a run-dominant team, which of course we are, but if you're unable to throw the ball, the defense feels more and more comfortable packing more and more people in there and matching up one-on-one on the perimeter, especially if you're not able to make the plays out there and deliver the ball. So it just opens things up. If you remove one guy from inside the box, sometimes that you lose that what we call free hitter, which is someone you can't account for. So to be able to do those things has enhanced or and greatly assisted our run game, both with him and the supporting cast.
You talk about the supporting cast, and you've got a guy between Ike Henderson that has been healthy this year. You're still waiting on the return of Braxton Noble. I know that was a kid that is going to add some elements and some depth into that running back room. But what does Ike and Tyson, again, in that running attack, what do they do of playing off each other with a good 1-2 punch?
Speaking from a defensive coach's perspective, it makes things difficult because I think a lot of people, of course, are going to give Tyson a lot of attention, which they should. But when Ike is able to run the ball as effectively as he's been able to for us, especially here moving into the later part of the season, then of course, and again, if you've got one person that's designated for our quarterback, then of course you lose possibly that free hitter we talked about, so for our running back runs. So, and being able to almost all of our runs have reads, meaning that Tyson has the freedom to pull it or to give it to Ike, or sometimes with the RPO game to throw it as well, and sometimes both of those options. So, choices are great to have, and that's something that I don't think that we were able to develop last year for a number of reasons. But now, again, we've got guys that are really doing a great job across the board, along with our guys up front, which we've made a significant investment in our offensive line this year that's really helped us produce points and put them on the board for us.
That's something when you talk about a running attack, when you have the ability to run the football at will at times, it starts up front. And your offensive line this year has certainly been that foundation that you need to build a positive-looking offensive attack that you have. Those guys that are in the trenches, how much have you seen their growth from last year to this year?
Again, to be there and to make the mistakes that they were making last year, we never could really sync up. And of course, we had a lot of things happen with that group last year. Those guys have had 3 or more coaches in a year. With us losing Coach Kennedy last year, and of course, Coach Pollock having to fill in, and then Lord forbid during spring practice I had to work with them. And then of course we finally got things right and were able to bring Coach Nevin Johnson on board with us, who's done a fantastic job with them. But it's a consistent message that they're receiving now, and they've got that one voice they can always go back to, the guy that's on the sideline that's going to help them make the corrections during the game. What I spoke to before was, we made an investment in those guys too, meaning that we are only starting one lineman both ways. And I think that's helped us a lot later in games, because last season, some things that really maybe held us back a little were our fatigue. And I don't think you can help it when an offensive lineman's playing offensive line and defensive line for an entire game, and you expect them to be producing at a high level in the fourth quarter. I don't think that's a realistic goal. So being able to keep some of those guys fairly fresh and just maybe spot play them on defense a little bit has really helped us, I think, later in games.
Coach, you look at the game last night, you get out to an early 7-0 lead. You lead 7-0 after one, but then Russell gets 2 scores in the second quarter, including a score right before going to the halftime. What was the pulse of the team when you guys got into the locker room?
I don't believe anybody was panicked at all. I felt like Russell did a good job. They were winning. They were playing more physically than we were in the second quarter. I should say that the second half of the second quarter, just because we were defensive line wise, we were getting some movement on us and really opening up some opportunities for them in the run game. And then of course we couldn't convert offensively on a third down and got a couple penalties against us as well. And then we put the ball on the ground, which set up their second score. But at the same time, we weren't panicking. We knew we were getting the ball coming out in the second half, and we knew that if we eliminate, or let's put it this way, we greatly reduce our own self-inflicted wounds with our penalties, that we felt like we could move the ball pretty regularly and convert on some of those opportunities that we missed out in that second quarter. But to speak to the pulse of the team, I think we challenged our guys up front defensively, and I think that they did a nice job answering in the second half.
Your answer you get to start the second half, 4 minutes into the second half, you get an Ike Henderson 9-yard run. Jace Griffith hooks up with Tyson for a 15-yard touchdown pass, and you guys regain the lead. What do you like about the response that you see there? And is that kind of an example of what you're talking about, the ability for this team to take that coaching and then turn it around and immediately put it right back to the field?
Well, it was great to see. I don't think that we had scored on the opening. If we got the ball first after half, I don't believe that we had opened the half with a score all season yet. So it was good to see us get off of that and make sure that we could start converting when we did get that possession to start the half. But it was just what is expected. I mean, I think that they just executed, and no penalties and certainly no turnovers. And when you do that, and I think that we're capable of moving the ball on just about anybody.
You go into that final play of the game, you've got the lead. Russell elects, instead of going for the tie, they elect to go for the win. The 2-point conversion fails. How much did you expect the possibility of the 2-point conversion attempt there? And what did you like about how your team approached the kind of the last-second decision by Coach Maynard to run the team out there for the 2?
Well, I wasn't sure what we thought they were going to try to fake the PAT. I shouldn't say we made an alignment and adjustment. I wasn't happy with how somebody was aligned, so we got them moved at the last second. So when they called that timeout, we thought that probably it was going to be some sort of fake to go for the win, which I completely agree with Coach Maynard on it. If I were to be in his shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. But as far as the play itself, when they came back out to go for 2, I think we figured it was going to go to one of their dudes. I thought either 39 Rock was going to carry the ball, who got the touchdown that set it up, or they were going to go to Cars Patrick. They're their best receiver and probably the best receiver in the area, which is what they ended up doing. And I don't think that we really played it as well as we could have. They ran what we call a return route, which is where the receiver pushes inside like he's going to run a slant and then returns back outside. And our safety, for good reason, squeezed hard on the inside route. And but Tyson, who plays what we call robber in our little package there, he I think got into the throwing lane a little bit, or at least had a white blur in there that may have affected the throw. But either way, they weren't able to hook up. And sometimes when you have these kind of things happen, a little bit of good fortune comes your way too. And so we're not opposed to having a little bit of that as well.
That good fortune pays off with a start in the district at 1-0. And when you look at your district, I think a lot of people believe your district is wide open this year, maybe the way it's more than it's ever been in the past. But how important does 1-0 look on your resume rather than taking a tough loss there at the end on the road?
It's that roller coaster. It's the roller coaster of high school sports or sports in general, where just inches or, half of a second or whatever however you want to term it, as the difference between, laughing or crying. It's one of those things where it happens like that. And, when you make runs, sometimes you have to have things like this happen. And so I think it's great to be 1-0 in district play, just because I don't want to say it's a little bit of a relief, but I think if you can get off to a 1-0 start, I think it's huge for your team, because now you've built we're off to a good start. We're not trying to claw our way out of a hole right here. And this type of game too on the road in the district, just I think it shows your team how we're going to have to fight, scratch, and claw for every piece of grass out there on the field every single week for the next 2 weeks. And I wouldn't be surprised if every game left in this district is much similar to the one that was played last night.
You talk about the roller coaster ride that you've been on in all of the levels that you've been in coaching, from high school to college and here and there. Have you been on a roller coaster ride, anything comparable to what you've seen this year?
Oh, gosh. Maybe not. I know I haven't been on a roller coaster ride like I've been on the last 3 seasons at Greenup County. just because of all the things that have happened. A lot of things out of our control too, with 2020 being as crazy as it was. And I can remember, thinking our season was over, and 35 days later playing a game, a playoff game nonetheless. And then the next year, all the things that went with it too. And then this year, so I would say the last 3 years have been the biggest roller coaster ride of all. Of course, I'm older too, and you get to appreciate these things as you get to be old. Because when you're young, I think you're oblivious to it. So my 20s, what I remember of them, I don't remember being anything like this.
For you, being your final season as the head coach of Greenup County after taking the assistant principal position, is this certainly one that you're going to take and be able to put another chapter in the book of your experiences at the head coaching position, and is certainly one of the most memorable and wildest rides that you've ever been a part of?
Well, it's definitely going to be a chapter, no matter what happens. But it's been a good one so far, and I think it's only going to be there are going to be a lot of highlights still here that we have left. And like I said, I don't expect anything less than for pretty much every week from here on out to be about just as crazy as we've experienced. I guess this is maybe I think this might be the third game we've had that's been under one score and come down to under 1 minute. So it's going to be like that. And these are things that are gut wrenching in the moment, but are really fun when you look back on them. I think even if you come out on the other end of these things, when you look back on it, this is what makes sports fun. Don't get me wrong, as a coach, it's fun to win by 40, but at the same time, I don't think you appreciate it as much. And maybe people get a little spoiled by it, and because winning is very, very hard. And we're never going to take that for granted.
Coach, before I let you go, I've got one final piece to pass along to you. A young man that you know a lot about that was at Greenup County, but Eli Sammons, he's going to get the starting nod today for U Pike in the visit from Georgetown. And being around the Sammons family as you have been, including Mason and Tyson that you've got on your program there, but when you look at what that family does, you see the opportunity for Eli today. How big of an opportunity is that for everybody and everything that family's accomplished?
Well, I can say this, that there's not a harder working group of boys that I've been around, and to have three in the same house is pretty amazing. And I think that's a credit to Tony Sammons. And listen, I'm going to be upset with Eli if he doesn't go out there and just compete as hard as he can, make some plays, and just remember that he's 6'6", 230 pounds, and he better tote the rock a little bit too when he's got the chance. Now, Coach Phipps may not agree with that, but that's what needs to happen.
Coach Zach Moore joining us here this morning. Coach, always a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time out and joining me this morning, and especially here on the video. It was awesome.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Take care, my man. All right, let's take a break. When we return, we'll check the Major League Baseball postseason playoff picture. It was not a good day to be a favorite, and we'll leave it at that. We'll talk about it when we return after this as we continue here on Let's Talk Sports on the Coit Sports Network. Back in here on Let's Talk Sports on the Coed Sports Network. James Carter, happy to have you along with us this morning. Big thanks to Zach Moore on the other side of the break for joining me, talking some Musketeers football. A nice win for the Musketeers last night up at Russell, 28-27. They hold off the 2-point conversion attempt for the win by the Red Devils and pick up the win in the backyard brawl. Some news that just dropped. The updated RPI rankings are out in Class Single A. A few weeks ago, before, of course, when the RPI ratings first dropped, you had arguably your two best teams in Class Single A that had the playoffs started then, they would have been on the road much of the entire playoffs. And everybody was up in arms and worrying about it. Well, the thing with the RPI, it's kind of like the college football playoff ranking system. You just have to let things play itself out, and it takes care of itself. And this morning, proof given. So Pikeville is number 1 in RPI. In Class Single A, Hazard is currently number 2 at 5-2, and then Raceland is at 3 with a 6-1 record. The points right now between Hazard and Pikeville at the top is separated by, hang on just a second, I'm a math guy and I still got to look at this one, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000, 4 100,000ths of a percent. That's the difference right now between Pikeville and Hazard. There's about 300ths of a difference between Hazard and Raceland. And then Bethlehem is fairly close behind Raceland, and then it starts to drop off after that. The top 8 would look like this: Pikeville, Hazard, Raceland, Bethlehem, Kentucky Country Day, Holy Cross out of Louisville, Newport Central Catholic, and Paris. That would be your top 8 right now in Class Single A. Well, since we just finished up with Coach Moore and Greenup County, let's take a look at 3A. And I think there's no argument about this right now, and I've talked with several coaches. Bardstown is the head of the class right now in Class 3A, and their RPI shows that they've got almost a 5% difference between Bardstown and Christian Academy. So Union County at 3, Mason County 4, Bell County 5, Lawrence County at 6, Greenup County 7, Trigg County at 8. Looking at the rest of the teams in the area here in Class 3, Ashland is at 10, East Carter at 12, Belfry down at 16th. And that certainly has some stuff to still play out, obviously, there. But that's Class 3A, and we'll see how things play. And again, this year in the playoffs, we're going to see things look a little different because we're not playing your own district again. You know, we play those 3 district games, and then you turn around and you play those same teams 2 or 3 weeks later. We've gone back over to sister districts. So you're not going to play the teams that you played in your district when you get into the postseason. So that's certainly going to open things up and make things a little differently. For some, that's not a good thing. For others, that's certainly going to be a good thing because sister districts, and they don't always compare up apples to apples. And you're going to see that especially in the lower divisions of football from around the state, but especially in Class Single A. I think the district that Raceland, Paintsville, Fairview, and Betsy Lane comes out of, their sister district, which is District 5, is not even close. And it's something that you could see that district that could have a sizable advantage on paper, if you will, and the teams out of District 6 could just run right through them. So we'll keep an eye on that as we move forward. But, of course, the RPI, it's starting to take care of itself, which is not uncharacteristic to see as we get a little bit later on into the season. All right, Major League Baseball last night, and, of course, that's the question. Underdogs roll early. Every single underdog yesterday victorious. It was, with the exception of the Guardians. The Guardians defeated the Rays 2-1. The Phillies, in a crazy ninth-inning flurry, they knock off the Cardinals 6-3 in St. Louis. Mariners blank the Blue Jays 4-0 up in Toronto, and the Padres rough up Max Scherzer, who gives up 7 runs in 4 2/3 innings last night. Yu Darvish tosses a gem and hands the Mets a loss in this best-of-3 series. Now, this is the thing, is that you in a 5-game series, you may not be in panic mode just yet. these first games, this wild card series, these are a best of 3, all 3 games playing at the home team's field. So now the Phillies, the Mariners, and the Padres only need one more win to advance on into the divisional round. So you've got a lot of things here that you got to worry about, and of course, you've rolled out your ace, if you will, to see what you can do. And a couple of these teams, they are not in a good place without a doubt. Now, here's the way things look right now. This graphic on your screen, also from MajorLeague.com. So in the upper half of the bracket, you've got the the Guardians, excuse me. I hate that. They lead the Rays 1-0. Again, this is a best-of-3 series. That's the 3-6 matchup. The winner of that game moves on to play the second-seeded Yankees. In the bottom half of the bracket, Seattle, the 5 seed, leads the 4 seed, and the winner of this game will play Houston. On the National League side of things, the Phillies, the 6 seed, has got St. Louis kind of up in arms, if you will. Now the winner of that one gets the second-seeded Atlanta Braves, who stormed from the shadows of death, basically, and took the National League East over the Mets. So now the Braves wait the winner of that one, and then San Diego and New York gets the option to head off to L.A. and go play the Dodgers. And, of course, we all know how well that's going to work. I still think that it's the Dodgers and the field, without a doubt. But it's something when you think about what the Dodgers have been able to do this year, even when they've been hurt, they still have new guys that just jump in there and continue to roll. But when you've got dudes like a Clayton Kershaw, especially in a 5-game series, if you need that guy in 2 games, you know that more than likely there's 2 of your 3 wins that you would need. That guy is that good. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think without a doubt, on the National League side, I want to see the Dodgers and the Braves. I think that's probably your 2 best teams in the National League right now. And, of course, I think everybody's in agreement is the Dodgers to lose this year. I mean, it's not even close with the final product that they put out there. If you look at it, they won 111 games, only lost 51. They won their division by 22 games over San Diego. And they had this basically was already starting to put it on ice back in August. And I think many may even said that they had this thing probably starting to put it on ice when we came out of the All-Star break. They outscored their opponents this year by 334 points. They only gave up 513 runs on the season, and which is remarkable in itself. No other team was even close. The closest were the Yankees at 567, who outscored their opponents by 240 runs. And the Yankees, in the first half of the season, they were just as dominant as the Dodgers. And then the All-Star break came, and that's when things really got shady for the Yankees. And they hit a very ugly lull and almost coughed up a division lead that they had at double digits for much of the year. But they got some help, too, by Toronto and Tampa that kind of struggled down the stretch. But the Yankees, 99 wins. They finished second place to Houston. It finishes at 106. On the National League side of things, the Braves and the Mets both finish at 101 and 61. But the heads-up series between the Mets and the Braves went in favor of the Braves. So that's how they won the division, which drops the Mets into that wild card spot at 4. And then Philadelphia getting in there as the 6th. So 3 teams out of the National League East, which was not anything that we didn't expect. The same thing out of the American League East. You got 3 teams out of that as well. The Reds lose 100 games, and they finish in a tie for last place with the Pittsburgh Pirates at 62 and 100. Did we expect 100 losses? Absolutely. I expected way more than that, honestly, especially with the way this team started the year. 3-22 was certainly not something you thought you were going to see 62 wins out of this Reds team. They really struggled down the stretch, though, losing 7 of their last 10. Now the question is, what do they do with that team? Joey Votto didn't play, I guess it was about the last month and a half of the season with a shoulder injury. Jonathan India, he's a guy that I think can be another big part of that program, but he really struggled with injuries down the stretch. And, of course, the pitching. They dealt just about every possible option that they had that they could roll out there. And, then, of course, dealing Luis Castillo at the trade deadline, sending him off to the Mariners. You're in a catch-22 now. If you're Cincinnati, do you like the direction that the team has gone? Do you like even the direction that it's heading? And I think if you're a Reds fan, I think a lot of people have said not a close, even close by any margin of error, that this ownership that has taken over has done nothing besides try to destroy the Cincinnati Reds organization. And I think you've got a fair argument there. There is zero reason that the way that the Reds had started to make a move forward and then just completely emptied the cupboards before the season even began. It was pretty much everybody was saying the Reds were eliminated from the postseason in spring training. And the fact that they still won 62 games after losing 22 of their first 25, that's pretty remarkable to consider that they did this mostly on a double and triple A roster. I still think David Bell has to have his name there as manager of the year. And people might say you're nuts, but when you look at what David Bell does with the pieces that he has around him, it's phenomenal that they can still put up 62 victories. Now, a product with Cincinnati and the first professional team in Major League Baseball should never be in this situation. Cincinnati, yes, it's a small market. They're not going to compete with the New Yorks, with the Bostons, which, again, how did that play out? The Red Sox dead last in the American League East this year. They were a travesty. No pitching, injuries, and I think they've got some free agency issues that they're going to have to deal with in the offseason, that they're going to have to cut some ties with some guys that maybe they don't want to. The question is, will Xander Bogaerts come back? Will you bring back Rafi Devers? One of those two guys, I think, are gone, and maybe both. And it depends on how that organization wants to go forward. But you don't have those type of names in Cincinnati. Yet the Reds are still, every single chance they get, dumping players, any possible name that they can get some form of return on, they keep bringing things back in. The big move earlier on was bringing in Hunter Green. They wanted Hunter Green. Well, they got their guy. And Hunter Green just still has not proven to be that dude. He's got an electric fastball. Everybody in Major League Baseball has an electric fastball. The problem of it is guys in Major League Baseball can hit that electric fastball. And when you can't spot your breaking pitches and find other ways to get guys out, that fastball turns into BP. And that was some of the struggles that Hunter Green has struggled with early in his career, and more importantly this year. How much can he take off of the experience that he gained from this year and take it to next season? And that's the thing I think a lot of Reds fans are asking. What does he have to take to the table after year one? And we'll see how things play out from there. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll switch over to the Gridiron College Football and Top 25 action. That's as we continue here on the Cool Hits Sports Network. Back here on Let's Talk Sports on the Coed Sports Network. James Carr, happy to have you along with us here this morning. As on the road down in Pikeville, I've got U-Pike and Georgetown later on this afternoon. So we made the trip last night with Raceland down to cover Betsy Lane, and only about 20 minutes from Pikeville, so we made the stay here in Pikeville, a beautiful town. Some very awkward event, though, going on. We pulled into the hotel last night, and there is a row of cones that have, I guess it's kind of like almost valet parking, but it's Corvettes, Porsches, Ferraris, Lamborghinis lined up down the street, right across from, we're in the Hampton, right across from the campus. But I don't know why that all these sports cars are in Pikeville, but it was quite the thing to see when you pull in, and I mean, it just lines of Porsches. It was kind of odd, but certainly interesting to see. All right, let's check the top 25 scoreboard coming up for today. We'll start with our noon games. Number 4, Michigan travels to Indiana in Big Ten action. Number 8, Tennessee travels to number 25, LSU. It's number 17, TCU at number 19, Kansas. Finally, Kansas gets ranked. They have to win 5 consecutive, but are the Jayhawks for real? And I think certainly. Obviously, you got a chance at home today. You're going to bring in the Horned Frogs of TCU. Now you've got yourself recognized. Now don't do something stupid and lose at home. That's certainly not what they want to do. But a great opportunity for the Kansas Jayhawks to, again, in the Big 12, a team that was picked dead last. And here they are now going after a chance for 6-0. So we'll see how that plays out. Arkansas is at number 23, Mississippi State. 2:30 this afternoon, South Florida goes to number 24, Cincinnati. At 3:30, good slate of games here. Auburn at number 2, Georgia. Georgia falls out of the top-ranked spot after maybe a couple of struggles. Struggled really last week on the road at Missouri. Had, I don't want to say troubles, but didn't certainly put Kent State away by any way, form or fashion. And I think coming into that Kent State game, a lot of people were starting to believe, and I know I was saying it too, that it looked like it was going to be possibly Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama, and then everybody else. But I think we've seen early on this season, all 3 of those teams certainly have some weaknesses and some possibilities that don't show up on the right night, and maybe things don't quite go the way that you want them to. So we'll see how things play out. But Georgia at home today with Auburn, a 28-point favorite. Dogs should roll in that one. Texas Tech travels to number 7, Oklahoma State. Number 11, Utah is at number 18, UCLA. Number 3, Ohio State travels to East Lansing against the Spartans of Michigan State. That game at 4. Number 9, Ole Miss goes to Vanderbilt. Number 21, Washington is at Arizona State. Evening games, number 5, Clemson travels to Boston College. It's Washington State at number 6, USC. Tonight, right here on the Cool Hit Sports Network, South Carolina visits Lexington, and number 13, Kentucky, after the Cats fell last week down at Ole Miss in Oxford. Had an opportunity to win that football game, but Oxford is not an easy place to go. So now how does Kentucky respond after taking not only their first loss of the season, but an SEC loss? South Carolina coming in 3-2. They're winless in SEC play. Our coverage begins with countdown to kickoff tonight at 5:30. Army visits number 15, Wake Forest. It's number 16, BYU at Notre Dame. Of course, that game's on NBC because NBC owns Notre Dame with all their coverage. That game is going to play in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, though. So, again, bringing these two teams together. Certainly at the beginning of the season, the hopes was going to be this was going to be 2 ranked teams. And Notre Dame at 2-2. And again, egg on their face after the loss at home to Marshall, who has just laid an egg ever since then. They get past Notre Dame on the road, then they fall to Bowling Green, fall to Troy, and then by any match that should have been taken, Marshall, I want to say for lack of better words, they struggled against Gardner-Webb. Now, they beat Gardner-Webb, but at the same time, it was not the number that I think a lot of people expected them to go up against. Marshall's got Louisiana coming up on Wednesday. And that's the thing. You get into these different conferences now. Now you've got some weird times that you're going to play. So you're going to play on a Wednesday night. So the question is, how can Marshall size up against some of the bigger Sun Belt Conference teams? You've got Louisiana, Coastal Carolina, Appalachian State all at home this year. They have to take advantage of these games and to see how they're going to size up against, I guess, the what, as you would say, maybe the top of the class of the Sun Belt Conference. Coastal Carolina nearly dropped one at home last week against Georgia Southern. Grayson McCall found a way. C.J. Beasley did literally a hurdle to go past a guy at the 5-yard line to get into the end zone. Coastal Carolina, they've got the weapons. Can they stand up defensively? And that's where I think it's still Coastal Carolina and the rest of the pack in the Sun Belt. Marshall would certainly like to put its name in that conversation. We'll see how that thing works out. Number 20, Kansas State is at Iowa State. Tonight at 8, it's Texas A&M at number 1, Alabama. Florida State goes to number 14, North Carolina State. And at 9 o'clock tonight, it's number 12, Oregon, on the road to Tucson and Arizona. All right, let's take our final break. When we return, I hate to go back to it, but it happened last night. There was another Karen sighting, and this one was directed at first toward me. I had nothing to do with it. And the lady didn't seem to care because as soon as she found out that it wasn't me, she opened the calls up and started toward the person that needed it, in her eyes at least. But another Karen sighting. We'll talk about it when we return after this on Let's Talk Sports on the Cool Hit Sports Network. Back on Let's Talk Sports on the Cool Hit Sports Network. James Carr, happy to have you along with us here this morning. It's time for the Border Sporting Goods Rant of the Week. Border Sporting Goods US 60 in Canonsburg for your hunting and fishing needs, as well as Liberty Gun Safes. See the good folks at Border Sporting Goods US 60 in Canonsburg. Well, another Karen alert. And this happened last night at the football game. as I made the trip down to Betsy Lane. This was coming out of halftime, getting ready into the second half. And, of course, the music selections that you get at football games, it's going to be a lot of probably your hip-hop, maybe your rap type of stuff that the football players like to listen to get amped up as they get ready for the game. Well, one fan in attendance decided that she had had enough and didn't want any more. And, of course, she turns, and I'm the first person that's standing there in the window. She's about 3 rows down from us, where we were in the press box, and she just immediately decides that I'm the person that's playing the music and starts to unlash at me to turn off the music, that she doesn't want to listen to it any longer. I quickly redirected her to someone else that needs to be dealt with in the press box. I'm like, I am not playing the music. Do not talk to me. So she turns and looks toward the press box, stands up on the bleacher, and starts screaming, to basically demanding for them to stop playing the music, that she did not want to listen to it anymore and that she could not stand to listen to this anymore. Well, the person that was over the music and playing the music in the press box handled it pretty well. He looked at her and said, well, don't worry about the music. That's my job, not yours. Enjoy the game. And you see so many Karens in the world. Again, if you don't know what a Karen is, do yourself a service. Go on YouTube and just search up Karens, and you'll probably enjoy a day of laughter from watching everything that Karens bring out. But a Karen is essentially just someone that's a bad person. And again, if your name is Karen, I'm not coming at you. Don't take that way. There's some great Karens in the world. But we all know that the name Karen, and I'll put it in air quotes like that over on the video side of things. But some people think that they are so entitled that they can just literally have the world basically bow up beneath them. And this lady literally thought last night, because she did not like that music selection, that the music should immediately stop. No matter if someone else there wanted to listen to that music selection or not, she did not, and it needed to be turned off. My question is, again, at what point in society, at what point in life, were we ever taught that you have instant, I don't want to say gratification, because that's not the word I'm looking here, but you have the ability to just basically step forward and say, I don't like what you're doing, turn it off. Stop saying what you're saying, you're offending me. But the problem is that sometimes those people don't understand when they're saying that they're being offended, the way that they're doing it also is being offensive. And they don't understand that it's a two-way street, and how things play out is certainly not anything that they care about. They only see it in a one-way route, and that's their route. They are always the one that's right. They are the one that is going to say what they want, and they want it their way. They go to Burger King because they want it their way. Okay, they're not going to go any place that's not going to basically serve them on a golden platter. But this lady last night turned off the music, she demanded. A Karen alert. Yeah, another example. You see it every single week in society. It's so sad of how often that it happens. But again, turn off the music. It didn't happen last night. And I did compliment the gentleman in the press box that was over the music selection. I said, you stood your ground very well, and you handled it very professionally. I said, kudos to you. And he goes, yeah, not dealing with those type of people, especially not tonight. Well, that'll do it for us this morning. A big thanks to Zach Moore, head coach for the Greenup County Musketeers. Nice win for the Musketeers last night over at Russell in the backyard brawl. They start 1-0 in district play. They head off to East Carter next Friday night in a matchup with the Raiders, who fell to Ashland last night at Putnam Stadium. That district's going to be a wild ride. And, again, playing sister districts this year, things are going to be set up a little bit different looking. That's a tough district to line up with as you look across. You've got Lawrence County and Belfry on the other side of things. So, again, taking care of business and trying to stay away from those top seeds when you match up on the other side, that's going to be key for any of those teams in those districts. But Russell and East Carter on the back end of that right now after tough losses last night to Greenup County and Ashland. All right, I'll be back with you next week as hopefully we're starting to get things back to normal. But district play, fall is among us. Football is certainly in full swing, and we'll have all kinds of great stuff to talk about next week as we continue through district play and bring you more coverage here on the Cool Hits Sports Network. Don't forget to hit us on our website, coolhits1057.com. Go over to Cool TV. That'll take you to our YouTube channel, and be sure to subscribe if you have not already done so. Click on that bell. Anytime we put out some new content, it will alert you, but we certainly appreciate all of our followers that have jumped on here and supported the Cool Hits Sports Network and the addition of Cool TV, including our sponsors, A&A Porta Potties, River Cities Builders, and Clark's Pump and Shops. A big thanks to my producer back at Mission Control, Dwayne Elliott. I don't think you had to mess anything up today. I tried to keep it as simple as I could for you, my man, but I'm certain that you took care of things on your side. I'll be back with you next week. For Dwayne Elliott and everyone at the Cool Hits Sports Network, I'm James Carr. Thanks for having me along with you this morning, and have a good weekend.